Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fourth Tier Fever. Hope you guys are doing well. The international break for many, but not in terms of the action in League Two, even though there's been a couple of games that were called off for international fixtures. But for players being called up, but we still got a whole host of somewhat action to go through. We've got red cards, we've got dodgy referee decisions to talk about, and we've got something to do with Swindon and the fact that their training ground is halted. We'll touch on a little bit more as we go through, but I'm not alone to talk about this week's action. Returning from the gravestone himself after missing last week. It was quite interesting why you missed last week, actually. You say that you had dodgy internet problems, but I'm not buying that because it was funny that the last week before that, it was your date with destiny in the FA Cup, as it were, even though you won last week. But we don't want to talk about that, and neither do we really want to talk about MK Dons' victory in the league that took place yesterday. Yes, I'm talking about Luke Payne. How is things at your end?
I knew there was going to be a comment of some sort. I knew I wasn't going to get away with it forever.
Oh, of course not. I'm not. If you thought you were going to get an easy ride, absolutely no chance.
It's fine. We still got 3 points against you, so I'll take that as a win anyway.
Yeah, you just pick the easiest thing in the book to throw at. That's it.
It's easy enough when you win a game, isn't it? So.
I was going to say pipe down, but I've realised you're just above us in the table. But not by much, though. Not by much, which is quite a rarity in itself, actually. To an extent. We haven't got the other two that said they'd come on, but there's a couple of things gotten away with that. Disappointed at Kieran it here, although I can't really say that we're talking about a Grimsby Town victory away at Newport. It was the only game. It was the only the fixture yesterday. It didn't have any goals, but it didn't. It had all sorts of drama. But we'll head on to that in a little bit. But yeah, it'd be nice just to catch up with him, just to get his views on that. But hey ho, we may do. I'm waffling a bit here. Let's crack on with the action. We started blabbering on about MK Dons. We'll start with them. Winning is becoming the norm. An interesting one, this one, against Cheltenham, 2-0 down. But MK Dons coming out 3-2 winners. Looking at, the highlights in particular, I think probably if you're Cheltenham, I think, they had really good opportunities actually to score a couple more what they did. And, you look at some of the goals they did concede actually, probably well worked by MK in terms of, like the second goal for MK, I thought was a really nice sort of move and just to find the man in the middle. But that third goal as well, really good for. There's some pretty good goals in there actually. And to be fair, could have been a few more looking at it. I'm not sure what you think, Luke.
Oh yeah, no. This was a bit of a mental game, really. We were 2-0 down within, I think 13 minutes. Something along those lines. Both three set pieces. I think both were pretty poor from our point of view. First one not closing down the man. Second one letting two runners through and not tracking them. The absolute basics of defending. But to be fair to Cheltenham, they did actually set up quite nicely. I was impressed with their tactics. You could see that they didn't necessarily have a ton of quality in their side, but the way they set up, the way they pressed, the way they worked together as a unit was really, really good. And I can see why teams drop points against them this season. They did play some decent stuff. So, for us to then show the character to come back, to come away with 3 points from 2-0 down, you can never complain too much. As you said, the quality we showed with some of the goals. I think Hogan was immense. His involvement in the first two, for the first one, absolutely bodying a defender and then getting the ball across. And then that second goal when Harrison came on, I just love the little header, that little header, just enough. And then obviously the final goal with Lawrence Maguire, a centre back, showing some outstanding footwork. What more do you want? That's possession football at its finest, even if it came from a set piece. We'll take it. It's not a great performance from us, but we'll take the win. It's fine, all right.
Lawrence taking it from his brother, I imagine, with that one. But no, I think you're pretty much spot on there. Even if it didn't sound like vintage MK, it was important that you got the victory, and you did just that. A really impressive victory for considering the circumstances where you are very early in the game, in fact. And you've mentioned about Cheltenham, and they have been as of late, very efficient. Very well organised. I think I saw that. I think in all competitions they were undefeated in 7. I think they won like 4 or 5 in that time. So it does look like that. That stuff was starting to click over there. Um, I think you're probably always frustrated. If you go 2-0 up in any game, the fact that you've not walked away with anything is frustrating. I think they might be a tad bit frustrated with a couple of the goals, maybe. But I mean, like I said, I think that third one in particular. I think if you're from a Cheltenham perspective, I think you're a tad bit disappointed with how they dealt with that. I think they probably could have done a little bit better than they did. But taking nothing away from Maguire and his finishing, the footwork that he showed there, that second goal, as you've alluded to, lovely little header, good move to take the ball away from the defender just to find Ellis Harrison, and then Alex Gilbin is goal scoring form at the minute. Another goal for him. But yeah, I thought there were some pretty well taken goals in there. From both, pretty much all of them. I think there was an element of well taken in there, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. I think what I like about it was just the variety. It's a case of we didn't have one specific way of scoring. One's come from a long ball up, which is unheard of from us. The second one's then a break through the middle, and then the third's a set piece. So it's nice to see us sort of playing with this variety and having multiple ways of scoring. And it's yet another game where we've scored 3 goals. I think we're up to second most goals scored in the league now, behind Chesterfield. So, I mean, that's a positive. It's the only downside of that is the defence, because we still haven't kept a clean sheet under Lindsey. But if you can outscore your opposition, you'll take it for now. But there's still things to work on.
Especially when you scored 3 goals in what's like 4 of the 5 games that you've won. I think a clean sheet's probably a bonus, but it's sort of like a little bit of football's about scoring goals. If you can find that way just to score 1 or 2 more than them, I mean, you're obviously going to win. I mean, I sound like the old book from Michael Owen there, but you get my point. But I'm starting to get the impression that I've always liked Scott Lindsey. I thought it was an excellent appointment for what they've done, and it seems like they're starting to, from looking at it, it starts like MK Dons are really starting to find their feet now after what was a difficult period. They're starting to perform to the expectations. It was probably, that was around them at the start of the season, because, by far and away, you'd see a lot of people predicting, for MK Dons to win the league, to absolutely walk it in some cases. I personally think we're starting to see that. I mean, the wins have been really encouraging, of course, but I think it's just playing with a little bit more, I say, even identity. I don't really think so. I didn't think there need to be, I personally didn't think there need to be that much tweaking from what Williams did. I think the foundations were there, but it's just the fact that it does look like Lindsey's working them a bit harder. I think that was what you were missing. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but that's where I got with it.
I'd say it's a lot of it's the off the ball stuff. Like, you're seeing us press much more effectively. But I do also think there's changes in character as well. Like, you're seeing a lot more fight from the players. Characters like a Callum Hendry or a Lawrence Maguire. You're starting to see this passion from players that aren't Alex Gilbey for once, and it's all sort of generating momentum all together. And it's looking, we're looking more of a cohesive unit at this point, I'd say. And we're playing with a certain freedom, which is great to see.
And you have that with the quality as well, which can absolutely kill teams. So, yeah, getting there. 5 wins in a row. I don't think you can complain too much, personally. Considering where you were when Scott Lindsey took over. Like I said, I didn't think much needed to be done, in all honesty. But it's starting to nail that, to looking like the side we all thought MK could be. I know we haven't really touched much about Cheltenham, but I don't think there is really much to touch on, other than the fact that, as I say, I think if you're not taking any sort of points from the fact that you're 2-0 up, I think you're disappointed in any game, albeit, it's all good. In fact, no, it's all good saying albeit. Coming to a place like MK Dons, really good run of form, can score goals. I'd be a tad bit disappointed. I genuinely would, they're on a decent run of form, I guess, themselves, Cheltenham. It's about, I think we say this for a lot of teams, how they respond now against to try and make it a game. I think they could get something out of that. But we'll have to see. But good win for MK Dons, has to be said. Up to fifth now, climbing that table finally. It's only taking you to November. Well done. Right. Well, I wanted to touch on the Morecambe Port Vale game, because I think it was quite a significant one. I think if you're probably looking at it in League Two, not just on the pitch and what the table says, because it's obviously top v bottom. There's obviously a lot in it, I think, at the minute for both teams, even at this early stage. But I think you probably saw some of the like the pictures, the clips, like off the pitch as well, with Morecambe's ownership. Looked to be a real like unity between the both clubs in like the march to the ground towards Morecambe's owner. And look, I think it's, we say this a lot, but it's we can only stand with them, I think, because they've had all sorts of problems. I think last couple of years in particular, and they've really come to light. And there's the fact that it's no club should be mismanaged like they are, and it's really having its effect on the pitch at the minute. But on the pitch, not a bad team, Morecambe. They're really not a bad team, and it looks like I saw a lot of complimentary words from Port Vale fans in particular, questioning how a Morecambe bottom. They don't play like the bottom, but they're not getting the results. It's as simple as that. And another goal conceded late, a late winner for Port Vale. I think probably to take them so long, I think it's a kick in the teeth. It's a kick in the teeth, and I think probably what would have been a really good point. But if you Port Vale, it's the perfect response from losing at Gillingham last time out. Because I think it was probably maybe one or two underestimated Morecambe in this a little bit. But they've done a number of them. But Port Vale, the top of the league for a reason. They find a way, and they did just that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they had a lot of control over this game, which is obviously good. If you're going away and controlling, that's always a good sign. I don't think they were necessarily at their best, because I'm looking at some of the chances and thinking they should have scored there, they should have scored there, they should have scored there. So they certainly could have been better, but at the end of the day, they did enough to get 3 points, and sometimes that's all you've got to do. I mean, sure, Morecambe are towards the bottom, and you'd love to put them to the sword, but they didn't need to do that. They just needed to get a result, and that's what they've done.
Exactly. And look, a couple of disallowed goals for both teams, actually. I know that Port Vale had one disallowed in the first half, Morecambe second. Where do you stand with Morecambe at the minute? I'm intrigued to know, because the bottom of the table, 10 points from 16 matches. They're 3 points adrift from Swindon in 22nd. They're 2 points behind Carlisle in 23rd. We've talked about past couple that in terms of what they've got on paper is not great. If we're going off paper, I've always thought that as long as you've got Derek Adams in charge, you've still got a chance. I firmly still think they do. I think they've been hugely unlucky in some games. Some games they haven't, and then they've been well beaten. And yeah, I don't really know what more to say, to be honest. Other than maybe frustration. I think frustration is probably the word that comes to mind, actually.
Well, yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, obviously, their situation isn't exactly ideal. The players they've got in comparison to a side like Port Vale, they don't really compete. I think they've done well to keep it at 1-0, but for me the concern is Port Vale didn't exactly have to be at their best to beat a Morecambe. So I think with Morecambe it's just kind of a case of they need to start beating the sides around them, because I think more often than not you know, they are going to get outclassed by the teams at the top end because they're not able to compete with those top sides. I think that's a reasonable statement. And it's just those moments of quality that they need. I mean, even in the Port Vale game, to be fair, they should have taken the lead through Dackers, who missed that chance from close range. Something needs to click. Even if it's not against the top sides, you have to take points from the teams around you. That has to start happening soon.
You ready to know who they're up against next week?
Go on.
They've got Swindon.
Oh, well, there you go. Perfect time to start.
It is, and I do get the impression it's huge for both teams. Let's go on to Swindon. Actually, did like a little bit of an order for this. I was going to talk about Chesterfield, but I've mentioned Swindon, and I think we should probably talk about them again because we just love talking about Swindon again. Look, Swindon fans, it's nothing personal. I promise you. Generally, it's not. Before you start getting your daggers out. 2-2 draw. Accrington, Stanley. Swindon took the lead. A Harry Smith header. Looked dreadful goalkeeping, by the way, from I think it was Billy Crellin in the Accrington goal. If you're coming out that distance, you've got to get it. It's as simple as that, and he got nowhere near it. Yes, we're probably talking about one of the best headers of the ball in the league, but it just looked a bit pathetic, if I'm going to be quite honest. And then, Accrington took the lead going into half-time, 2 goals from set pieces, which were poorly defended, I think. I think they were poorly defended. That's certainly what Ian Holloway thinks because he was far from impressed in his post-match interview, talking about he's let the boys have it at half-time, and I will be. I think with the manner of the frustration of those goals, the fact that 2 set pieces, they've lost a header, it's just been really poor. But I mean, the equaliser's worthy of getting anything from a game. The lovely piece of skill from Dan Butterworth to to fake the shot from take out a couple of players in the game, just that little bit of composure to find the corner as well to beat the keeper. It was a lovely goal. It was worthy of getting something out of the game, and they did just that. I don't know, is it a good point for Swindon? I don't know in all honesty. I think already, I think he's probably telling that you've got to beat the teams around you. And Accrington are another team that's somewhat around them. All right, Accrington have done okay as of late. They've picked up a few wins here and there. They've been on really good form, in fact, actually, looking at it. But I think we're starting to get to that point with Swindon where they've got to pick up and they've got to get some wins here and there. And we've just discussed they've got Morecambe next week. I think, They've got Morecambe next week and they've got Colchester the week after. For where both those teams are at the minute, 2 huge games for them. And I think minimum they've got to get 4 points at the bare minimum. But I don't know what to think, actually. I don't know if it's a good point or a bad point for Swindon.
I think for me it's a bad point because it's like, as you said, you have to beat the teams around you. And it's not going to get too. I mean, I know Accrington are on good form or whatever, but they're still one of the teams in that area of the table. It's not going to get easier if you don't have to go and if you suddenly need to beat a Port Vale or something like that. They do have a favourable run of fixtures coming up, and this is the perfect opportunity for them to start stringing some results together. I will say it looked like they had a bit more going forward in this game. Obviously, that Butterworth goal was outstanding. I do think Blackpool probably should have scored from the chances he had as well. The concern is more defensively because they're still not getting the basics right. As you say, it's set pieces. With set pieces, more often than not, it is an error with the basics. No one should be able to get a clean shot at goal from a set piece. If you do your marking and you're tracking properly, you should never get shot away. But obviously, they failed to do that twice, and they've only got a point as a result. So, I mean, it's from the perspective of they were behind in the game. Okay, fine, good point. But I think in the bigger picture is they needed a win there, so it's a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I think you swayed me actually. I was just maybe looking at it from the fact that they were losing at the break and pretty good goal to equalise. But I think if you're looking at it on a whole, there are 2 poor goals on their end, and it was quite interesting what Holloway had to say in his post match. It sounded like there was like a bit of a willingness to jump, I think, at times from their players. I think there was a point where he generally wanted to put Harry Smith as a centre back just because of his height and how good he is at heading the ball. And he went on the fact that if any of his players can't do that, he's going to bring players that can do that. He's 1 or 2 have already been let go at Swindon. I mean, we've seen that Jeff King's already moved on to York, albeit there's circumstances with him and just the fact it didn't work out, and probably clean slate was important. Not sure if that was his decision or not. I'm not too sure, if I'm going to be honest. But Holloway just comes out with some mad stuff in his post-match interview. I had listened to it of that. I think the Swindon Messi is a little bit over the top. I think if you're 22nd in the league at the minute, but not taking nothing away from the goal, it was a really good goal. He then mentioned something about how their training ground is apparently haunted and is apparently near a graveyard, and there's something like that. Apparently that he wishes there was a Portaloo near him in the game because he drank so much water. It's a really bizarre interview, but it's just the custom of him. I'm not sure. I think the thing is what I say, I think if you're getting results, it's more bearable to listen to. I think if you're not winning games, I think that's the last thing you want to hear. I heard it with Holloway at Town. I know exactly the frustrations there with that. But it does like he's coming in, I'm just giving him a lift. Not, in some ways, just keep their spirits up. Whether he's got much tactical knowledge, I know I'm questioning a man that's got 2 promotions to the Premier League, albeit a decade ago now. Look at the clubs and jobs that he's had there and how miserably failed, how much he failed at a couple of them in particular. But I just see this period as a bit of a do or die at the club at the minute, just already, if I'm going to be honest. And I still have my doubts if he's the man, if I'm going to be truthful. I think I'm probably just looking to it for more of what he did at us, but I think even then, I'm not sure.
I think this run will tell you whether he's the man for the job or not. Like I said, the fixtures are there. What more could you possibly want? The one good thing about getting that point is it is a platform to build off. You've got 1 now. Go and get 3. Go and get another 3. Go and get another 3. I know it's not just the next 2. I know there's a good sort of like 4 or 5 fixtures there that are winnable. They need to win probably at least 3 of them and pick up a point in another or something like that. They need some kind of momentum to work with, because that's how you're then going to get results off of the teams higher up in the division, because you can use that sort of motivation and the sort of character and the spirit that will bring to your team. But if that doesn't happen, they're stuck in a rut and suddenly they've got to go and play all the top sides.
Yeah, can't really argue too much for that. Look, again, Swindon, nothing personal. I do hope you get there. I say get there, like they're sort of like on a bit of a high. I guess they are. I guess they are in the sense that they're on a hike in which they need to just bag a couple of points along the way. But they have to at this point. I think with the games that are coming up, I think they're absolutely key. I think even with the run that Accrington have been on, I think it's probably not a good point at this stage. I think because with the greatest respect to Accrington, as much as the run there, they don't look the best of sides in the world. You can see what they tried to do, especially recently. But I think there's aspects that in that game, I think both teams would have liked and both teams would have hated. I think it was just one of them. But yeah, it's absolutely key for Swindon that they pick up the next week. I think we've gone on a little bit of a rambling with Swindon, but I just think it's important. I think probably important with the rest of the teams around. We'll touch on Carlisle eventually. I wanted to touch on Chesterfield. I said last week after they lost 3-0 to Accrington, actually, it just felt like a different defeat. We know that Chesterfield have a knack of just poor defensive displays. I think they do concede a a fair few goals. I mean, not as much as maybe some other teams around them, but I do think you see some of the goals in which you're disappointed. Another 2 shipped in yesterday, albeit one very late for Harrogate. I think for the keeper to parry it straight to the oncoming attacker in the last minute, probably not the best decision in the world. Could he maybe have parried it to one side? I don't really know. Another brilliant goal from James Berry. I mean, I'm for someone looking at him, from like a opposition view, I'm liking James Berry by the minute. I think he's got everything to be a pretty good player, and it looks like he's sort of having his own goal of the season contender already. That was another really good goal from him. But I just see this as very Harrogate. If I'm going to be honest, it's the fact that they have some poor defeats, against some probably some sides that they should be winning, and they do lose to the odd side in which they probably do expect to get beat. But yeah, it just seems them all over. When they counter attack, they're a good team. Probably not seeing it as much probably with some of the results, but I think they are a good team. And it's a defeat for Chesterfield in a little bit so far of an inconsistent campaign. Not so much for the fact that they're losing every week, far from it. Just with the fact they just can't probably put a little bit of a run together where they win like 2 or 3 in a row or something like that. I mean, it's always been. I mean, up until recently, it's probably a bit harsh actually, considering the fact that they've just gone 8 unbeaten in the league. But I think only 3 of them were wins. So it's clearly they've got a problem with winning games at the minute. But yeah, I just see this as very Harrogate, if you know what I mean. They can pick you off if you're not careful. And they did just that, albeit maybe with the last goal, maybe a tad fortunate with how it came out to him. But you still got to put it away. It was a pretty good finish nonetheless, still, actually.
Well, I mean, they sure know how to volley a rebound, to be fair to Harrogate. They didn't generate too many meaningful chances, but the ones that they did have, they took. And, sometimes that's all you've got to do. It wasn't a flashy performance or anything like that. They just ground out a result at home. They know that, that Chesterfield side has goals in it. And to be fair, to restrict them to 1 isn't half bad, to be fair. That's not a particularly bad performance, but then to come away with the 3 points as well by scoring 2, I think it's one of them. It's just a solid performance on their behalf, but concerns with Chesterfield, I must say. I think the only way, this is going to sound like a very stupid statement, but the only way they can win is by outscoring the opposition. I mean, obviously you have to score more than the opposition to win, but they can't defend. Quite simply, they cannot defend. You would love to see them just do a nice little 1-0. And to be fair, the way I'm criticising them, this is something that probably resonates a bit with Dons at the minute as well. You have to have other ways of winning a game, of just that tight little 1-0. We know they've got quality going forward, but defensively, there's no one in that side, maybe aside from Dunkley, that you're worried about facing. Defensively, I don't think. They're too easy to face defensively. It's getting the basics right, which really matters. I don't think they close down properly, and it's tracking. It's those absolute basics, and that's when you see stuff like things like rebounds happen. Obviously, sometimes it's unavoidable, just right player, right time, or whatever. But more often than not, it can be avoidable. So for me, I think Chesterfield are definitely underperforming in the defending department.
You sort of just truth be told, just like in general, did you at this stage? Did you maybe expect a little bit more from Chesterfield? I mean, look, they've got a good squad. There's clearly some good players in that squad. They've got quality. They've clearly spent a few quid. I think it's probably fair to say. Maybe. Yeah, they've won a few, they've lost a few, they've drawn a few. They've just been in I guess for a newly promoted side, I think, it's not too bad. But I think probably with the expectations of some of Chesterfield this season, I just don't think they've been quite at it yet. I don't think they've been quite. I don't even think they've been that. I don't even think they've been near. If I'm going to be honest, I still think there's there's a fair bit of work to do. I mean, goal scoring is not a problem. I think they're the highest scoring. I think they're the highest scorers in the league at present. Maybe you do look at some of the goals they shipped, but ultimately, I thought they'd have won. I think maybe if they'd have won 1 or 2 more games, I don't think we had this conversation. But I don't know. I just feel maybe not. I don't know. I maybe expecting a little bit more from where they are at the minute. Truth be told, but the quality's there. Like I said.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they're just too top heavy. I mean, they've got so many good players going forward. You know, they could put any combination of players on the pitch, and you'd feel like there's a threat going forward. But defensively, it doesn't quite add up. They're almost turning into this season's version of Notts County last season. They can score a load of goals, can't defend, and I think Notts County that season, I don't think they were even top half, were they, in the end? You know,
no, I think they're like 13th, 14th in the end. I think.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be good at both. That's the only way you can get yourself towards the top end, and I think that's something they're ultimately going to have to look at correcting in January, because for whatever reason, it's not clicking with that defensive line they've got at the minute. Something has to change in that capacity.
I think something has to change. I'm not sure if I agree with. Yeah, it's quite Notts County levels at the minute, because they just conceded goals for fun, didn't they? It was ridiculous the amount of goals they were shipping like 3 or 4 every week at one stage. You know, they shipped 5 times a few times last season. Yeah, I'm not sure if I probably agree with the fact that it's probably that bad, but there's definitely concerns there. I think that they do have to be addressed, and I can't really argue with much with what you said there. But I did think, you know, I thought they'd be somewhat a little bit better than where they are, truth be told. It's not a criticism by any means, but I just feel just that with them. They're an interesting one to go on, but, you know, they've got the manager in place. They've got the players. I think, you know, I think there's a couple of things that need tweaking, but other than that, not too much, I don't think. And there's still a fair bit to go. So we'll see what happens with them. I do feel like we've gone a little bit on, and we've only talked about a handful of games. So we'll move a little bit quicker. Crewe 2, Notts County 0. Big win for Crewe Alexandra against one of the other promotion hopefuls in Notts County. 2, I mean, the first goal is really well worked from Shiloh Tracy. Just runs the whole length of the pitch to slot it in. And then we have to talk about the penalty, don't we? Ryan Cooney put it away. Good pen. An interesting celebration, truth be told, going straight to the keeper. But I think we have to talk about the penalty, don't we? It was Omar Bogle that went down. I think that's a no. I think he slipped. I'm not sure what you think. One of a couple of what looks to be refereeing somewhat howlers this week. I think that's one. I really do.
Yeah, I think it was as well. To be fair, it's one of them. It's kind of sad at this point, really, with the officials. You kind of have to say is every week there's at least one where you're like, really, there's one big decision where you're like, are you sure about that? But yeah, especially for a game of that magnitude, because to me, I know it's early to say, but this feels like it's a bit of a 6-pointer at the top end of the table. So you really kind of wanted that to be done properly. I mean, I think aside from refereeing decisions, I think it looked like it was a good quality game between two sides that are, very much at the top end. And I mean, Crewe have come away with it. I mean, and weren't Notts on like a outstanding away run as well. I don't think they've beaten away until that game. So
yeah,
from Crewe's perspective, yeah, I mean that's a really nice one. Do find it quite funny though that a guy called Long was on the pitch for probably the shortest amount of time, sent off after about a minute. But there you go.
And I think looking at that red card, I honestly don't think he can have any complaints, to be quite honest. Look, I didn't even think about the Notts County's away record. I think that probably makes the victory for Crewe that a little bit better for the fact that they have ended their away from. Look, I think, Crewe, Notts County, we've seen bits from the penalty incident afterwards and at the end with the celebrations with the scuffle. it's been a feisty fixture in the past. I think it's probably fair to say. I think I do remember hints of drama from last season as well, with the penalty and a couple of other bits. But Crewe has got on the right side of that, and it's Lee Bell performing his magic. I feel like we're praising him every week because we have to have it. Like, it needs to be out there for the job that Lee Bell is constantly doing with this Crewe side. Just when you think, right, okay, they might drop points here and there, they just pull something out of the bag near enough every time at the minute, and they look like a real good side, especially from, I think, the early season doubts that we probably had with the start they've made. That's history. That's history as far as they're concerned. Some impressive wins in that time as well. Beating Fleetwood, beating Tranmere. They've gone and beaten the likes of Gillingham, Harrogate, Accrington, Morecambe that they beat. They've taken points off Doncaster. And they've taken points off Walsall. They look good. They look really good. And I always question if they'd keep it on, if they'd keep it on from last season. They'd obviously lost players in the summer, a couple of big names in that, but at the minute they're going really well. What problems were there to be had? Trust what Lee Bell is doing, and it's clearly working out for them. I don't know what more you want me to say. They just look really good at the minute.
What are you going to do? I've already got Crewe fans chatting to me saying how bad that prediction was, and fair play. It is testament to Lee Bell and what he's achieved with what he's got. Because how critical I was at the beginning of the season, moving players on to divisional rivals. Never a fan of that, but they've developed the players they've got, and they've built a good cohesive unit there, and they're getting the results to match. So can't really argue, especially with a win like this, which to me is a statement to the rest of the league.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to give them a lot of credit. We have to give the players a lot of credit because they're doing the job on the pitch, and they're fun. They're up to second. I think it's probably made a lot of people's look. It's not just us. I think a lot of people probably had Crewe around the mid-table mark. There were never a threat of any sort of relegation worries, but we wasn't sure if they'd have gone on to somewhat repeat parts of last season's success. It got a bit. It went a bit downhill near the end, but I think overall, I don't think many people predicted Crewe to be up there last year, and they just go about their business. I think at times quietly, and it's working for them. So fair play to that. Notts County, look, defeat for them. They've got a home game against Newport next. The Newport side, in which are struggling, I think it's probably fair to say. Look, we've mentioned about Crewe being a good side. Just a blip. I think they've got a couple of injuries. I think it's just a blip. If I can get 3 points out of against Newport next week, I don't think there's too many complaints, if I'm going to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think this game it was just one of those days, wasn't it? Yeah, the controversy against them. Various sort of chances not quite finding their destination. I don't think there's too much to be disheartened by. That it was still a reasonable performance, and they still, put up a good fight. Because realistically, they were never going to go the entire season unbeaten away. They had to drop points somewhere. It would have been unheard of if they hadn't. So to drop it to Crewe, that's not, that's nothing too major to worry about. And as you say, they've now got a chance to bounce back against Newport, and I would fully expect them to do so. Sorry, Kieran.
I fully expect them to. It's as simple as that. We've talked a lot in detail about these games. We'll probably rattle through the rest of these pretty quickly. Doncaster won, Salford won. Doncaster dropped points. Really nice finish from Killian Kouassi for the goal for Salford. Billy Sharp with the equaliser. They're unbeaten in 5. Doncaster. Salford not doing too bad at the minute. They've had some decent results as of late. Doncaster scoring with their one shot on target. I think it's probably clear what their problem was in this one. I don't really know what to say, really.
You've immediately hit on the one point I was going to make. I mean, they weren't as dominant at home in that game as I would have liked them to have been. I mean, they still generated chances, but they lacked that sort of killer instinct to put the game away. And ultimately they ended up going behind for a while instead, and ended up having to chase the game. Which, to be fair to them, they did manage to come back and at least take a point. But this is the sort of game where you'd hope for a routine home win if you're a Doncaster fan. Obviously, hasn't worked out that way, but I mean, there's still positives to take from that performance. Just perhaps slightly disappointing not to kill that game off, really.
Yeah, perhaps, but I think you do have to give a little bit of credit to Salford. I think probably with their run at the minute. Like I said, it's a really nice finish from Kwasi. The fact that he just takes it on first time, and to beat the keeper from just about outside the box, really nice finish for the goal. And it's that old warhorse Billy Sharp with the goal. Another one for him. What's he on now? 5 goals for the season. Which is not a bad return for someone of his age, especially when he's got probably the likes of Joe Ironside with him. Especially more. I think probably recently where Ironside has been in the team a lot more. Looking at it, it's still a pretty good return. But yeah, I think. What have you made of Salford as of late? Because they started the season pretty slow. I mean, we sort of took the mickey out of Jake a little bit for probably the lack of goals at Salford's end. I mean, we went on about it for Tranmere, but Salford were having similar-ish problems at times. They've had some good results as of late, and I think that's they've won. They've taken 3, 6, 7, 8. 9 points out of their last 5, losing the 1, and that was late to Carlisle. What have you made of them so far? Because it's somewhat pretty much where I've expected Salford to be quite honest. Mid-table, 14th way out a minute, it's all middle of the pack, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd say overall that probably sounds about right to me about what you'd expect. I think this specific performance, though, that they, as you say, they do deserve a lot of credit for it. This was a very, very strong away performance against the top side. And, I mean, not only did they get a goal, but it looked like they could have scored more as well, to be fair. I wouldn't have been surprised, based off of what I've seen from that game, that they could have actually gone on and won that one. I'm not going to criticise them for not winning it, because I still think getting a point is actually a really good result for them. But they're showing signs of life and signs of being able to compete with some of the top sides. And they might not be able to do it regularly, but if you can do it, even just every now and then, you're going to be in a reasonable position come the end of the season.
Yeah, of course. Taking any points, I think, of Doncaster this season is not a bad thing. Even if it is a draw, it's a decent draw, especially at their place. I think probably from a Doncaster perspective, I certainly look at it for the fact that it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was poor, but it wasn't vintage Doncaster. I think for probably what we have seen at times this season. I think just the one shot on target, I think probably tells you everything you need to know. Although that one shot on target being a goal, just not quite ruthless enough, and maybe a little bit of question marks whether they did enough to win the game. Probably not. If we're talking about that. But yeah, good point for Salford. Tough place to go. Old cliche, I know, but I suppose it keeps up there. I wouldn't say it's a spectacular run, but they're getting there. That they're picking up points here and there, and it's. I think for probably where they were maybe at time. I mean, they weren't losing games every week. Granted, I think they have drawn a lot of their games, but it's probably just killing teams off maybe and. When they have been winning, and for the fact that they have struggled to find it on numerous occasions this season, it's definitely not a bad point. It's definitely not a bad point at all. What might feel is a bad point is Bradford 1-1 draw with Colchester. I mean, we know that Andy Cook's got goals in him. Another one for him. Bit scrappy. I think it did look like if we're talking about stats, Colchester had the much better of it. But Doncaster, Jesus Christ, no, don't slate me for that one. Bradford will be very disappointed in the goal they conceded right at the death. I've got question marks over Sam Walker for that from the corner. I've got question marks with probably the defender as well, how no one was really tracking him. I think it was McDonnell, was it? The goal scorer, yeah, Jamie McDonnell. It's a terrible goal to concede right at the end. You get rid of that, the full-time whistle goes, and it's a big win on the road for Bradford. Yeah, just a terrible way to drop points. I'd be livid, actually.
I do actually think that that goal kind of summarises their performance in that game. Really, to be honest, they looked off guard the entire time.
Like, that throw-in, and I think you've probably all seen it. That throw-in, and I think it was the first half, summarises Bradford perfectly. I think not just this season, but just as Bradford in general at the minute as the club. It's just so perfect. Go and watch it if you haven't seen it already. It's comedy.
Oh yeah, no, but yeah, it was it was poor all around, really. You know, I think that the only threat they really had was Kirk. I mean, fair enough, he is a very good goal scorer. There's no arguing with that. But I don't think they offered really anything else. I think without his quality, put it this way, if you took him out of that 11, I think they lose that game. I'd go as far as saying that. I think they were really off colour in that game. And, I mean, naturally, they'll be disappointed regardless to have sort of dropped a late goal. But I think even getting anything out of that from the way they performed specifically in that game, I mean, I don't know how they've done it, to be honest.
One thing I do question is, where would Bradford really be without Andy Cook? I know it's a team effort and there's more to him, but his goals are just so vital, clearly. And looking at the team, I don't know. I mean, it feels like quite an insane comparison to make, actually. But because we're talking about Andy Cook, who I think he's the best striker in the league. I think he's that good. But without him, I don't really see much quality in this Bradford squad. I don't really see much, where the goals are really going to come from. And let's be honest, he saved them on numerous occasions. Important goals that have sealed like big results at times, and he's done so much for them clearly. Obviously, he can't really do anything about him in particular can't do anything about the equaliser. It leads me to Colchester. They're without a league win for a while. Since the end of September was the last time they tasted victory in the league. And guess what? They play us next week, so that's 3 points for Colchester United right there. You're welcome, lads. But it's weird, because I think if this is any other manager, I think you're probably talking about, this is really dodgy form and you're probably looking at a change. And my mate, I just think it's so much for Danny Cowley. I think he can turn it around. There was clearly a lot of change in the summer with some of the players that they were bringing in. I think maybe questioning it. Maybe I think that there has been one or two questions of this, maybe myself, maybe of Danny Cowley, but I'm not sure just yet. And it sounds ridiculous to say with this run that they've been on, that it's clear that they're struggling in the league. And if they won a few games, I don't think this draw is anywhere near as, maybe, I say bad, but not really. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a good team on paper there, but I just feel like it's somewhat old habits from previous seasons at the minute from Colchester, and it's clearly taken a bit more than maybe some anticipated for them to properly turn the tide. I don't know. I really don't know where to go with them. Because I mean, some of the draws, they've not been bad results. I mean, the one against Bradford, being late. The one against Barrow, in particular, being late. Stuff like Chesterfield, but they draw pretty much all the time. But some of the defeats in there, I think, are probably quite telling with some of them. Like I said, they haven't won a game since, the back end of September. I don't know. I think there's probably one or two concerns at the minute, but I think I'm probably just looking into it because it's Danny Cowley. Is that probably a good thing to do? Because I don't know where to go with Colchester.
Well, yeah, I think they're kind of hitting a bit of a crunch time, really, for this sort of part of the season, because that performance against Bradford was really good. I think a point was, the least of what they deserved, but ultimately they were dependent on a last minute equaliser or whatever to bring them back into it. So I think that they're lacking cutting edge at the minute. They're lacking reliability at the back as well. I kind of assume it has to be some sort of mentality thing, because there are players with proven track records in that squad. They should be doing better, as much as we talk about it on paper, but they should be doing so much more. And I think if there's anything that could get them to rally, you would hope it would be picking up a point in that sort of fashion, where they've clutched it at the very last second. They need to use that now, as that's a fantastic platform. It's a great momentum boost. They have to use that. If they don't, that's when I'd start to have some real concern, really.
And I'll come back to you when I take 3 points off us next week, as I mentioned. It's just bound to happen. Right. Well, last couple of games, Barrow, AFC Wimbledon, good win for AFC Wimbledon, needed a response after losing to Grimsby last time out. And they got that. A couple of goals from Matty Stevens, a goal for Joe Piggott in there. Andy Dallas with the goal for Barrow. He's not having I think he's only scored 2 goals, actually, which actually makes me a little bit surprised. I thought he'd have got a couple more, but long way to go. It was, good win for Wimbledon in the end against a Barrow side in which probably are a bit. I think they're stuck in a fair bit of a rut at the minute in terms of how they've been doing, but it's the perfect response for Wimbledon.
Oh, for AFC, this is it was a really, really good performance. I can't take away from that. The only criticism I can have is of Goodman, who has now made mistakes in back-to-back games, and I have said for weeks that I think it's the weakness of their team, and I'm sticking by that. The only problem with that is the rest of the team in front is actually really good. I can't argue. So really good away win from them. I don't really have too much more to say on it, to be fair, other than hoping they stop winning.
I need to check if Goodman was in goal for Colchester last season when they beat us 3-2 at Blundell Park. He had an absolute nightmare. Sort of like the ball was played back to him at the halfway line and he couldn't use his hands, so he tried and he somehow headed it into his own net. It's ridiculous. That might have been him. I can't quite remember. I could be wrong. Barrow, where do you stand with them at the minute? Because they've not been that great in the league at the minute. Probably somewhat, I think the early season optimism is probably, for how good that they started the season. I think at the minute it's starting to fizzle out. I think it's fair to say.
Well, yeah, I think specifically looking at this game as well, I think they were really flat. They had a lot of the ball, didn't really do much with it. There wasn't much purpose to anything they were doing, really. The goal came off of a mistake, not something they generated themselves. And the thing with Barrow is it's not going to get any easier. You're looking at the next 4 games, it does not get easier. So somewhere they're going to have to try and rally and get points. Otherwise, that's turning into a bit of a serious losing streak, and that's a bad habit to get into.
Yeah, I've just seen their games: Chesterfield, Bradford, Barrow, Walsall. Yeah, they're difficult. Fleetwood is arguably difficult as well.
Yeah, it doesn't get easier. They need to rally in some capacity. For me, I don't think there was really a point they looked like winning that game. I know that AFC left it relatively late to kill the game off or whatever, but you could see it coming. You never felt like Barrow were going to go on, were going to kick on and win that game, and that has to be a concern, especially at home.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they've had a couple of that at home at the minute where they've not, would have been subpar. It's as simple as that. I think they do have to pick up a little bit. It proves they've proven they can do it. More than proven they can do it. You just have to take a look at the run at the start of the season. There's clearly a good team in there, but something at the minute is just not right, and it needs sort of shifted pretty quickly. Bromley 1, Carlisle 1. A late equaliser for Carlisle. A 92nd minute equaliser for them from Adu Ajay. I think I've said that right. I really apologise if I haven't. A penalty. Bromley took lead by a penalty. Don't think you can have many complaints with the pen. It was pretty stonewall. Michael Cheek put that away. Something I do want to point out, though, is I feel like Bromley get a red card like every game at the minute. I'm not sure. I just feel like they have. Another one for them, with Lee getting red carded. I take a look at the start of the month, and they had a red card in the FA Cup game against Rochdale. They had a red card the other week against Cheltenham, and now they've had a red card in this one. Maybe a disciplinary issue coming into effect there, but I don't think Lee can have many complaints. It's a pretty stupid elbow from the look of it. But I think for Carlisle, yeah, all right, late point salvaged it, but I think already at this stage you've got to be beating teams. They're pretty much like Swindon. I think you've got to be beating teams around you at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in terms of performance from Carlisle, I will say it did look better, but the problem is the result didn't come with that. So they still lack that sort of quality in the final third, and I mean, yes, they've managed to take something from it, but as you say, I think they needed 3. And again, I'm looking forward into the fixtures here. 4 of their next 5 are very tricky. And you could have maybe excused a couple of losses in the next couple if you'd beaten Bromley, but now not so much. Now you've got to try and take points off someone better than Bromley. So it doesn't get easier. But they have to be more ruthless in these situations. But you can accept that they're not going to necessarily have the quality to win every week, especially at the minute with the way they've been going this season. But at some point, you have to, really kick on and, show that you've got the quality to at least stay in the division at the very least.
Where do you stand with Bromley?
I mean, I think this was okay from them. It didn't look like a particularly good performance as such, but, they were grinding out the result. I mean, I think they'll obviously be disappointed to throw it away, but point's a point. But, yeah, it's a tricky one with them. I don't think they should be too worried just yet, but again, I feel like this is one of those games where both teams should be disappointed with the fact they've only got a point. For me, this is one of those where someone needed to really take this game and win it, and obviously neither side has. So yeah, I think this disappointed on both sides, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I get exactly where you're coming from. I think Bromley, you look at it, right, you're playing Carlisle, struggling for wins and points at the minute, in 23rd. Carlisle, you're looking at it and thinking, right, okay, Bromley, they're not a million miles ahead of us in the league, in terms of league position, and in terms of points as well. I mean, Bromley have struggled for wins in particular. At times, I don't think it's a good result for either team. I think at this stage, I think you're pretty much right. I can't tell who'd be the happier. I mean, Carlisle, yeah, all right, late equaliser, probably what they deserved if we're looking at the overall performance, especially stat wise. Bromley be disappointing, late goal to concede right at the end where winning for a fair period. Just didn't see it out. It's quite interesting to note that Carlisle's goal came from, I think it was a long throw. It was either that or a corner, which Carlisle are doing at Bromley. Actually, it's not what I expected Carlisle to do, especially against a team like Bromley, with the greatest respect. But yeah, I don't think it does any favours at the minute at all. I think it's a missed opportunity for both. I feel that at the minute. Carlisle's next couple of games is Doncaster and Crewe, say no more. 2 really difficult games. So we'll see how many points they can pick out of that one. Probably, well, I don't think even the most optimistic of Carlisle fans probably expect much from those 2 games. But I look at their next few games after that. I mean, they've got the likes of Newport coming up. I mean, Chesterfield are a bit hit and miss, and then Port Vale. So there's opportunities for points, but also they're difficult games as well. I think it's fair to mention. So that's pretty much where I stand with those 2 teams. Last but not least, I know we're pretty much just running over the hour in this one. We've not quite kept it under an hour. Apologies, Ryan, but this is how the cookie crumbles, I guess, for me. We've got a stalemate between Newport and Grimsby. Wasn't at the game, was following it. I think on the balance of it, I think it was a game in which both teams looked like they could have won, but also both teams looked like they could have lost it. It was quite, it wasn't one of those dull 0-0 games where, that not really much happened, because there were a fair bits happened. We had a goal disallowed for offside. Both teams missed sitters, especially that one at the end from Courtney Baker-Richardson. It's harder to miss. If I'm going to be honest, it's harder to miss, and I think we probably should have lost it just on that, because the goal's literally 5 yards in front of him, and I don't know how he's not hit the target from there. It's a really poor miss, but we have to talk about the penalty. I've followed town quite a fair bit. I think, last few years, I can comfortably say that's by far one of the worst decisions I've ever seen given against us. Greeny's won the ball so perfectly. I saw a Bromley fan trying to justify it earlier. No. What I can't even justify was the fact that the referee was literally 2 yards in front of it. He couldn't have got a more perfect view. If we'd have lost the game to that, I'd have been fuming. This podcast wouldn't have been any good. That's fair to say that, but look, Jordan Wright has been terrific. Last couple of games, probably a little bit shaky at Wimbledon, but we probably don't win that game if he didn't make some of those saves. Decent save from the penalty. Thought the penalty was pretty poor from Hudlin, to be quite honest. I'm not particularly sure why Hudlin took it. I think probably if you're looking at some of the other players in that team, but I think understandable. I mean, he's on a decent rich vein of form at the minute, and a couple of other saves from Wright in that as well. I thought he had a terrific game, and he was a big reason why we got that. But look, I think overall, for the grand scheme of things, it's not quite 6 wins in a row, which would away from home, which would have been a new club record, which would have been fantastic. I think for pretty much how the game went, I'm more than content with the point. Long way to travel. We've had some good wins recently, and it's not the end of the world. I'm quite happy with the point, actually. Just we're in the plaster for another week, so I'm all right with it, and we've drawn a game. I didn't think it was possible. So there, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of them. I think both sides will take a point. The previous game we were saying, I think both sides would be disappointed. I think both sides would be content on this side. Maybe Newport slightly disappointed because they've had a penalty saved. I'm going to defend Hudlin in the sense that, yes, he probably should have been able to score it because, he's a striker. Scoring goals kind of your job, mate. So I'm never going to have a problem with a striker taking a penalty, but you have to do it better than that. Obviously. That being said, I'm never letting anyone tell me take a penalty ever again. But yes, no. I think this was one that could have gone either way. In the end, it's gone, straight down the middle. I mean, both sides have missed chances where the ball's been, gone straight across goal. So maybe slight concerns on quality in the final third or for both parties, but it's one of them. It's just grinding out the results, isn't it? It'll do. It's just one of them.
Yeah, I think on our part, I think it certainly seemed like a case in which I don't think we did enough to win, if I'm going to be honest. But what I have seen a few people say, maybe as a tad hint of disappointment, that Newport looked sort of there for the taking. You could probably see why they've not been great as of late. And we've played some decent stuff from the sounds of it in that game. But look, I'm not really going to complain, especially when you've got idiots like the man who refereed our game yesterday giving Newport a penalty at any sign of he was desperate to give that. And I've heard the referee just on, not even that, but it was pretty pants yesterday. And I did sort of moan about it on Twitter that, in a week in which, referees have been in the spotlight for the wrong reasons, mainly off the pitch. I mean, it's that's a completely different story, the whole David Coote scenario. But on the pitch, the standard is beyond appalling, and it will continue to be beyond appalling if nothing changes, because a lot of these referees in this league are part-time. You know, a load of them have day jobs, and at the end, you're not surprised that, you know, if the fact that they're not full-time, you know, you continue to get awful decisions like that. We'd have lost like I said, we'd have lost the game yesterday. This is a different conversation. And it'll be more anger fueled for the fact that, you know, we've lost the game and it was none of our own doing. It's the fact that the referee has made a ridiculous call. It's not just our game. I've mentioned the one about Crewe. It's a really just no. And it will continue to get bad. You know, we see instances like this every week. It's nothing new at this point, but that doesn't mean we can accept it. The standard is appalling, absolutely appalling, and I've got nothing else to really say other than that.
Can't argue with anything you've just said, to be honest. Certainly been on the end of a few bad ones ourselves, so it's one of them things. You'd hope that things improve at some point. Not convinced they will. I think it's going to continue to be horrendous for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've had a fair share of luck, I think, with referees at all. So it does maybe sort of iron itself out. I mainly look at that game against Tranmere when Tranmere had a stonewall penalty not given in the 95th minute. But that doesn't mean we can accept it. It just doesn't. They're just constantly ruining like good matches just for the fact that I feel like they want to make it about them way too often, and it's not good enough. It's really not good enough. That's all I'm gonna say from that. And it will continue to be like that unless something changes, in which won't be anytime soon from that. But again, moving away from that, decent point, all things considering, on our end. Maybe a little bit of frustration, maybe a little bit of concern for Newport at the minute with their run. Maybe one or two question marks being made about Jardim at the minute, but it's clear to see that they're not in a good predicament at the moment. And they need to get a couple of wins pretty quickly, because I think if they don't, I think they'll quickly slide down that table very quickly. I think they are at the minute at times, but they'll continue to decline if they don't pick up, you know, a couple of wins anytime soon, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one with them. I'm struggling to see any real sign of consistency. So I don't really know what to make of them. If I'm totally honest, you know, I don't know. I can't quite tell where I think they are in comparison to other sides in the league. Like I can clearly tell they're not, you know, up with like us and Port Vale and all the rest of it. I can tell they're not quite as bad as, you know, a Morecambe or a Swindon or whatever, but beyond that, I genuinely don't know what to think of them. I don't really know how they view themselves either. Like I don't know what they're expecting. to be honest, I don't know what the expectation is. I don't know if they're hitting it, but maybe more to come from them. But yeah, hard to tell at this stage.
Two inconsistent sides playing out a 0-0 draw was just written in the stars when you think about it. It just had to happen. Actually, if you look at it from that, probably not too much of a surprise. We'll wrap it up there, I think. I think we've gone through pretty much everything. We have gone a little bit more in detail. I mean, with two games not being played. I mean, Tranmere should have played Fleetwood. Walsall should have played Gillingham this weekend. That would have been a huge game, that, I think, actually. I mean, those two will obviously be played at a later date. Pretty much gone through what we've needed. Gone through a pretty good chat about, you know, some teams are probably where they are at the minute. Of course, it'll be great if you guys let us know your thoughts from this weekend's fixtures. You know, what you've made of the season as a whole. You know, it's one thing that we're interested in. Probably might do something. I think, you know, there's a game. It's FA Cup weekend again in a couple of weeks, and a lot of League Twos and a fair few League Two sides will not be in the second round. Look at us too. Yeah, I quite like the week off anyway, so all right. No, we might do something for that. But in the meantime, make sure you, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, of course, does help us out. If you're listening to this podcast on our streaming files like Spotify or Apple, make sure you go download it. It does help us a lot. We should be back next week. Don't hold your breath for a full cast. I think midway through that recording, Kieran apparently said he went for a conquest of Cardiff. So, yeah, that's sort of where that Kieran is so unpredictable, man. I love him. He's so he is a character, but yeah, we were looking very likely to have a full cast at one point, but yeah, it's falling short again. So yeah, don't hold your breath for probably one anytime soon. But that's all from me. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, just thank you guys for your support. Any comments and all of that, always appreciated. We're always happy to engage with you guys. So yeah, just keep the love going. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Right then, we'll see you next week, guys. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves, and yeah, we'll see you in a bit.